Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to ponder the question or the trade off between relief and making symptoms go away versus a cure of making the cause go away. Isaac, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I forget when we originally had this item on our list, but I know we've touched on it a couple of times. Um, it's basically whenever you're trying to work on something you know is a problem, like a code base that has a ton of different issues in it, and you have
Mm-hmm.
some people that want to fix, or that's why people want to rewrite to begin with, right? There's something wrong with it, and they just want to fix the whole thing. And their idea is a rewrite will fix the whole thing instead of some other way. Versus why don't we just fix or like duct tape a couple of areas so we don't even need to rehaul anything. Let's see what the main issue is. Like a customer has these problems, maybe we can address those problems with something simpler. And so there's this argument back and forth between people who might seem lazy by suggesting a quick patch to get by versus someone who wants just to fix the root cause of the problem because they feel like if you just duct tape it, you're not going to address the root cause and you'll keep getting more issues. So there's like this trade off between those types of personalities. And what do you think?
Yeah, well, similar. Well, first of all, I know where this idea came from. Actually, uh, Tony Newcomb from Active Campaign suggested it to me many months ago.
I
That's where
see.
this one came from.
Cool. Hi,
um,
Tony.
Hi, Tony. We're doing it. We're doing that one you asked about. Uh,
Great.
um, but I was thinking about it in different ways. I once worked with a developer, and he was pretty good, but he would relieve symptoms. So there would be a problem, and the database would get out of sync. It would get into an impossible state, and he would write scripts to fix the database,
Mm.
and then he would write run books and say, "Oh, well, when you encounter this problem, after here's how you diagnose it, and then run this script." And he would have giant decision trees of run books that would go into all these things and all these scripts that he created. And I would argue with this guy, and I would say, "Look, these run books are right, but what if we just fix the problem, and then we would stop having to mitigate,
Yeah.
because that's the alternative. If what you do is relief, then you're going to have to come and give relief again, right? If you take cold medicine because you have a cold, that doesn't really, it's not helping you at all, other than it's giving you relief while your body fights off the cold. It doesn't help you fight the cold itself.
Yeah, but it's still valuable, right?
It's still super valuable. Don't get me wrong.
You could see that like in the analog being like giving, not fixing the root problem, but actually giving something front facing to the customer that makes them feel like the problem is alleviated briefly until we actually are the immune system behind the scenes trying to fix the actual problem.
Right, and that's where the trade-off aspect of this comes from, where it's great, right? If you've got a cold and there's nothing you can do except take some medicine that's going to give you relief, then
Mm-hmm.
that relief is the most valuable thing. But if you have, say, the flu, is the flu a bacteria? Something that you can solve with antibiotics.
Right.
Taking cold medicine will also relieve you of most of the problems for a short time, but really what you need to do is take antibiotics, because that's going to cure you.
Yeah.
In But in software, there's the trade-off of, well, relief is usually faster,
Hmm.
and so if you give customers relief, that kind of also kills the motivation to then go and doing the hard work of finding a cure.
Right. Well, I would almost counter. I have two thoughts there.
Mm-hmm.
One, if you put in some relief and it's good enough relief that you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to put in X hours to fix the root cause, then is it really that big of a problem? You know?
Well, is it not a
Um,
cure at that point?
right. Yeah. Well, the other thought is it kind of made me think back on the Jonathan Stark episode where they were talking
Mm-hmm.
about fixing it and like how many hours it take to fix it versus paying somebody, as a non-technical person just to run these scripts,
Mm-hmm.
and pay them a different salary, because it's not like a technical position, but you just give them some scripts to run and the problem's not fixed and it's not fixed, but fixing the problem the right way could be, $500,000 versus paying somebody in a non-technical role to run a script for you every so often, even though it's kind of a tacky solution, it's much cheaper. So one of them
Yes.
feels right because it's actually solving the problem, but the other one is like very business conscious of like how much, what's the budget of the company? Do they have time to fix it the right way? Is it worth fixing the right way? How many people are exposed to the problem who are complaining about it?
Hmm.
You know, I think those would be my trade-offs.
Right. Money. The
Money.
the money question of for the lifetime of this problem, can we mitigate it and never cure it cheaper than we could fix it?
Yeah. That's an interesting question for me. And it's one that got on my nerves, I think,
Hmm.
a lot, like many years ago, because I want to fix the problem. And I like the idea of a well oiled machine.
Hmm.
And so I would spend a lot of time finding tiny fires and trying to make the tiny features well oiled while ignoring the main bread and butter of the company and how they're making money. Just because I like things working efficiently. We get really caught up in the idea of to be a good developer, I need to make everything efficient, even the smallest pieces of the system.
Hmm.
Which in my philosophy at the time that made sense, but in the bigger picture, as I started like working with startups and realizing they don't have the budget for me to spend all of my expensive engineering time working on this tiny problem they don't care about, it's not worth it to them. So I had to start thinking about those reliefs versus cures. Let's cure the main issue that your customers are leaving about, and then let's add some relief, patches in a couple of areas where we can get by. It doesn't look great, but it's a better use of our time.
Yes. Uh, yeah. That I'm reminded. My mother had a phrase when I would out reason her on something that she didn't want to do. And she would say something like, I hate this answer, but like you've convinced me that this is the rational answer. Emotionally, I still hate it, but you've
Yeah.
convinced me that this is the rational answer. And that is very much how I feel about like the whole, yeah, we're instead of fixing this problem for $500,000, we're going to hire some human to do it for $40,000 a year and
To
assume
press a
that
button,
it'll, be fine.
press a
Yeah.
button to sync the data that we
Push
can't
button.
find an easy way to to easily sync when the root cause. It's Mechanical Turk. It's kind of lame.
Well, there's also a slippery slope, right? Once you've got a human, you've allocated a human for $40,000 a year to push a button once a week because that's cheaper than spending $500,000 right now. Now you have a human who pushes buttons, and it will
You give them more
incentivize
buttons
you.
to
It's
push.
the next time. It's
Yeah.
well, how it's okay. Well, we've got another $500,000 problem. It's like, well, having Scott push the button, having two buttons to push doesn't cost us. There's no incremental cost there. So of course we're going to make Scott push the button, and soon Scott is going to have a whole department of button pushing monkeys because that's still cheaper than fixing the
Yeah.
software.
Right. And there's something again, like it comes down to money and budget.
Right.
But I definitely have talked to some people who have too much pride for that to be an acceptable answer for them. Like they have
Hmm.
pride in their engineering career and they're like, I'm not even going to work on this project or work on this thing at all unless I can build it or refactor it or whatever the right way. Um, and I understand where that philosophy comes from, but until once I married that with like the money part or the business part, where someone's
Hmm.
like imagine you're like you go to somebody and say, can you fix this problem now in a way that will help my customers out? And they go, no, I'm going to charge you a lot more money to do it the way I think is the best way for you. And they're like, I don't have the money for that.
Right.
It
Yeah. They don't have
depends
the
the
money or
size
the
of the company
resources.
too.
Yeah.
If you're Google, yeah, you might be able to be able to get away with that and do it the right way and take a longer time because you've got a lot of money to play around with, presumably. And if you're a startup that's running off either just the owner's capital or just
Hmm.
a couple of investors, and you've got a finite amount of money and really expensive engineers, that's a harder sell to leadership, I think.
Yeah, and I think we should do a whole episode. I really despise the statement of doing it the right way because
Yeah.
that's nails on a chalkboard to me because it implies that well there is an absolute right way and you're not doing it, so that what you're doing is wrong. Where it's trade offs all the way down.
Yeah. Well, doing it in a way that doesn't make you feel ashamed. It's a better way to phrase it.
Well,
There's some patches I've done for the sake of the customer that I'm like, this is really gross, but everyone's happy with it. I'm like, all right, man, whatever.
I once monkey patched a Java library that we had lost the source code for, and so I had to decompile it, decompile the whole thing, find the specific spot, recompile a new version of that, and then slide it into the jar, which is a zip file of Java files. And it was horrid. Like, it's called monkey patching for a reason. But that was able to fix something that saved the company $500,000, so it was fine. Like, I totally understood why I was doing it. It's trade-offs all the way down. If relief or cures don't matter if the patient dies before you get there.
Yeah. Well, and same thing with the company itself. Right. Mm-hmm. So like if the company goes under because we spent so much money working on trying to solve things the academically better way rather than patching it in a way that would help the customer now, that would keep, money coming in. That doesn't help things either. You have people getting laid off, and the company dying is also just as bad.
Yes, company dying is bad. So I think, have we come to any conclusion on relief versus cure? I think we're back to it depends.
We're back to the frustrating answer to it depends.
It depends.
It depends on the company, and again, like I think that we've kind of covered both sides of people's perspective here, and unfortunately, there's no real right answer other than like you have to look at your business and see if they can afford to do it the right way. People want to, I think people instinctively want to do it the right way. I don't think anybody wants to go in there and just kind of lazily patch things. But one little example, I think that would be kind of a fun one to tie together at the end of the episode is I brought to mind this CSV importer project where there's like a list of customers. This is not related to ActiveCampaign. This is another company that imports customers for CSVs.
It's a pretty common problem.
It's a common problem, yeah. So they had issues where if the file was too big, you'd get like a 504 or something would crash or whatever. And this is all in PHP as well. And so what was happening is to help the customers out, customer support would take the file and break it apart into 5 pieces, and they would import them or 5 or more pieces, and they would import each piece one at a time on behalf of the customer, because the customer was so frustrated. And that was the way to get around at the time. And so one thing we did to there were so many things to work on. The CSV thing was important, but there was other things like an issue with invoices double billing that was a bit more important, even though both are very important, right? And we didn't have the resources at the time. So we found a way to make the script not do a 504, essentially. Let's just up the amount of time the script can run. That way, customer support can upload the file and just sit there and wait. Like, this thing wasn't even asynchronous. It was just synchronous uploading, right? So the only problem this solved was the fact that customer support didn't have to manually split a file into 5 pieces. They could just hit the button and, they're still uploading on behalf of the user because the user is still having these problems. And so like the quick solution at the time was, let's just make it to where if you just sit there and wait, it'll actually work instead of timing out. And that was actually an acceptable solution at the time. And we still have plenty of other things to do. We were like, maybe put a loader up there, move it to asynchronous and let it process in the back end, and let people know up front, hey, we're doing it. You can move away from this page now, or something like that. That's all planned. That's the way to do it. But at the time, it's like customer support was thrilled that they didn't have to do this anymore. So I just thought that was such a funny half-ass solution basically to this problem, because they're happy. We made some progress. We have plans for doing it the right way, and now academically correct way, whatever, the not a shameful way. And then we can move on to the invoicing problem, tackle that, then come back to the CSV import problem.
Yes, because you got them relief. You couldn't give them a cure, but you could give them relief, and they found that to be very valuable.
Right, and if I wanted to sit there and spend more time and all of our resources doing the CSV way, then our invoice double billing bug could keep happening, and that's even more pain.
Yeah, that's a really bad bug.
So that's the trade-off there. So if you're tasked with telling a developer, no, I want you to just increase the timeout and leave everything else just as messed up as it is, it's really hard unless you can zoom out and see budget and see other problems at the company
Hmm.
to understand that that is totally acceptable for right now. And just to be like, as an engineer, I have to make this really terrible solution because they need me on something else that's even higher priority, and this is fine for now. So I just thought that was like this happened a few months ago, and I thought it was like it's just a great example of the it depends of the situation.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.